Hi, I'm your host Molly, and welcome back to Blueprints in Bloom, the UK's #1 leading interior design podcast. In today's episode, we will be discussing a range of topics within the industry that we believe to be crucial information for aspiring interior designers. We hope you enjoy this episode, and don't forget to like, rate, or subscribe to our podcast wherever you may be listening, as it all helps to be able to push our podcast out to even more listeners. So, what are the creative industries? I'm sure many of you listening will at least have a vague idea as to what they are and what job titles are included. But did you know that the UK government has a list as to what exactly comes under that bracket? This is to create a consistent framework for collecting data, analysing economic performance, and developing targeted policies. Under the creative industries category, we find a broad range of roles. The following job sectors are all found to be within the creative industry bracket created by the UK government: advertising, architecture, crafts, design, fashion, film, TV, radio, photography, museums, galleries, libraries, music, performing/visual arts, publishing, and IT software, which does include video gaming as well. All of these job fields contribute approximately £124 billion of gross value, which is then added to the UK economy according to the 2023 figures recorded and published on the UK government website. After the COVID-19 pandemic, the creative industries revenue rose a considerable amount, with UK creative industries gross value added rising 19.7% higher than 2019 pre-pandemic levels by 2024. Which ended up outperforming the overall economy. The growth was largely led by a swift acceleration in digital media and a higher demand for streaming content. Now that you know a little bit more about the creative industries on a whole, let's home in on our creative industry, interior design. Some may think that our industry is as simple as throwing a few fabric samples around and picking out some new couch cushions. However, we all know that that is not true. An interior designer creates functional, safe, and aesthetically pleasing indoor spaces while also planning and selecting layouts, colours, lighting, and materials. We also manage projects from concept to completion, making sure that client needs, budget, building codes are all considered. Reportedly, the global interior design market generated revenue of $137,930 million US dollars in 2024 and is expected to rise to $175,741.3 million US dollars by 2023. This shows that interior design is definitely not a dying art form and is in fact getting stronger and more in demand with each passing year, making it a great career choice for the foreseeable future. So, whilst talking about the future, let's move on to sustainability. It is likely you have some degree of understanding when it comes to sustainability. However, this is the Cambridge Dictionary definition: the quality of causing little to no damage to the environment and therefore able to continue for a long time. So, you may be asking, how does that apply to interior design? Sustainability in interior design means creating healthy, eco-friendly, and socially responsible spaces by minimizing environmental impact, reducing waste, and focusing on the long term. Humanity relies on sustainability to help the planet's ecosystems, health, and economic stability, of which without, we would create an inhospitable environment for human life. Not only that, but we also rely on it for biodiversity, mitigating climate change, clean air, and clean water. Now we know why we need to ensure good sustainable practices are being used within our industry. Let's look at the statistics. Globally, the built environment accounts for roughly 40% of carbon emissions, with interior design primarily contributing through material use, short product life cycles, and operational energy such as lighting, heating, and appliance use. The furniture that we use in residential properties is often replaced after a decade, and commercial use furniture can last as little as 5 to 7 years, which overall creates tons upon tons of waste annually. In fact, according to the North London Waste Authority's recent reports, 22 million small pieces of furniture are discarded every year in the UK, with much of this waste being sent directly to the landfills. Not only is it a problem how the waste is being discarded, but there is also an issue of how the materials are being transported. Using ships to transport these construction materials is called an acidification of the ocean, which directly impacts marine life. This is created by carbon emissions from burning fossil fuels absorbing into the ocean, which in turn makes the ocean more acidic. Due to all of these factors, many people have been looking for more sustainable materials that can be used within our industry. One increasingly popular sustainable material is newspaper wood that was first developed by a Dutch designer called Mike Meerja in 2003, and later further developed with the design studio VIJ5. This innovative material is created by rolling layers of old newspaper with glue to create a log that, when cut, reveals layers which resembles wood grain or tree rings. By using this material in place of natural wood, we can help prevent further deforestation and reduce landfills waste, as it is using old newspaper. Now we have talked about sustainability, let's move on to socially responsible art and design. Socially responsible art and design can be defined as creating solutions that prioritize societal and environmental well-being, moving beyond functionality to encompass ethical and sustainable consideration. In other words, there are 4 main points of consideration to be socially responsible. These are ethics, sustainability, community, and diversity. Firstly, let's talk about equality, diversity, and how our industry accommodates such things. According to a study carried out by the British Institute of Interior Design in 2020, only 22% of senior position jobs are currently held by Black, Asian, and minority ethnic people, which leaves a staggering 78% of senior positions to white people. The same study also shows that 81.64% of people in the industry that took this survey identify as female. Next, employee welfare. During my research, I found conflicting information about employee welfare. In a 2022 interview with Kay Preston, founder of Designers Minds, she stated, the design industry is a stressful environment often marked by designers who work incredibly long hours to meet tight deadlines. The pressure to always be on and creative is high. Expectations from leaderships, clients, and personal ambitions feed into the daily stress designers are challenged with. When working under this pressure, often the simplest of well-being practices get overlooked. There are also cases within interior design where people have been accused of allegedly committing cultural appropriation, such as Company Pendleton, who have been profiting from decorative blankets with indigenous designs on them since 1909, despite the fact that they are not Native American. Interior designers can both positively and negatively affect their customer base off of their designs. When an interior is well thought out, it can have a positive influence on a person's mental health. This can also work in the opposite way though, as if an interior is not well thought out, it can have a detrimental effect on a person's mental health. Socially engaged practice, also referred to as community engaged practice, is defined as a collaborative, often participatory, and involves people as the medium on material of the work. A good example of this in the interior design industry is the Sanjay Nagar slum redevelopment project in Ahmednagar, India, which has led to the Community Design Agency, also known as CDA. Within interior design, the pioneers of socially responsible practices have moved the industry from just aesthetic space to a more human well-being approach, which focuses on sustainability, ethical practices as well. One historical figure that was crucial to these developments in the interior design industry is Frank Lloyd Wright, who was a pioneer of organic architecture and believed in the democratization of quality housing. Nowadays, in 2026, Lloyd's work is still massively influential and is still actively shaping how homes are designed with his ethos. Now that we have covered sustainability and social responsibility, let's look at something that is closely related to these topics: ethics. According to the British Institute of Interior Design website, the interior designer's ethical code of conduct is described as having integrity, safety, sustainability, and confidentiality. For example, a situation that could potentially challenge this conduct is if a designer recommends a contractor or a supplier who is a relative or friend, simply due to this fact, even if this person may not have the best prices, quality materials, or skills for that project. In order to be ethical in interior design, we must ensure that we are not just going with aesthetics, and we are in fact looking at creating a human-centered design which fits the client's needs. This includes looking at themes of accessibility, sustainability, cultural sensitivity, legal and regulatory compliance, professionalism, and ethical material sourcing. One amazing pioneer in this is previously talked about interior design Frank Lloyd Wright. However, there are also plenty of other designers who are at the forefront of this movement. One of these designers is named Laura Hodges, who has dedicated a page of her website to help others learn how to decorate their homes more sustainably. Not only this, but her design studio is also a member of the Sustainable Furnishings Council and the US Green Building Council. There are also other things that all artists and designers need to consider when creating products in order to be ethical. These are copyright laws, fair use, and public domain sources. The BBC defines copyright as a legal right that protects the use of your work once your idea has been physically expressed. Once these requirements are met, copyright law protects you and your work from multiple things, such as people copying your work, people distributing copies of your work without your permission, making an adaptation of your work, and even putting it on the internet. In the UK, copyright law can protect your work for up to 70 years, depending on what form of art it is, where afterwards it becomes public domain. In the interior design industry, our work is protected for up to 70 years after our death. However, this does not apply to the final 3D design, such as interior space, and only to our drawings and plans. Now we have established what copyright is, let's look into fair use, also known as fair dealing in the UK. According to Channel 4, fair dealing is a statutory defence to an action for copyright infringement and describes several circumstances in which copyright works can be used in full or in part without permission from or payment to the copyright owner. Now, what if something is no longer protected by copyright laws? Well, this is known as public domain. Public domain is defined as category of creative works that are unprotected by intellectual property law. An interior designer who got on the wrong side of copyright law is Ross Cassidy from Los Angeles, who allegedly created a knockoff of a light fixture from a line called Oscar Lighting, which was originally created by New York-based studio Roman and Williams. Next, let's discuss current and future trends within our industry. For those of you who may not know what a trend is or what it means, it is defined as the popular taste at a given time, and this can be applied to a broad range of topics, not necessarily just interior design. Currently, in the interior design industry, we can see trends such as romantic minimalism, texture contrast, modern medieval, lava lamps, and even mosaics. For 2027, it is currently predicted we will see a rise in design styles such as maximalism, Korean design, and old and new. These predictions have been made by people known as trend forecasters, who continually monitor consumers and the industry through traveling, reading, networking, listening, and most important, observing. Often these trend forecasters control future trends, as companies often design their products in accordance with these predictions, which directly links to customers consuming these sorts of products due to there being more on the market that year. One interior designer who is seen as reliable influencer is Kelly Wearstler. She has almost 30 years of experience in the industry and a collection of award-winning spaces that she and her firm have designed. Major influences come from her well-respected career and designs as well as her online presence. Another well-respected and experienced interior design influencer is Justina Blakeney. She is also the founder and creative director of Jungalow, which started in 2009 as a design blog where her designs were said to resonate with people all over the world, and after she received feedback that her designs made people feel free to step into who they are. Nate Berkus is also an extremely good example of a reliable and trend-setting interior design influencer. With 30 years experience, he is recognised for his approachable yet stylish aesthetic to a wide range of audiences, from television and media to product collaborations and design products. He has been a regularly featured guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show to talk about design, a major US talk show, which was watched on average by 7 to 8 million Americans a day. Since we have now covered trends, let's have a look at what a niche is. Vocabulary.com defines niche as some kind of professional specialty. It has to be something that is considered a specialty in a brand, which is not widely considered for that specific market. A few examples from the interior design industry include biophilic or regenerative design, luxury residential design, or even family-friendly design. It is likely that if you work in the industry already, that you have been asked what your niche is, and whilst you may not already have one, some say that having a niche can provide clarity, help attract aligned clients, and position you as an expert. However, others argue that it can limit your client base and lead to less projects overall, as well as creating a sense of boredom in the designer. Next, let's look at some infographics of influential people currently working within the interior design industry. Now, let's look at some of our icons, or more specifically, my personal icons, which we have designed into infographics for you today. On the screen, you'll currently be able to see an infographic on Elsie DeWolf, Peter Marino, and previously talked about Kelly Wearstler. Each of these people are pioneers and icons in the field of interior design and have each shaped the industry in their own way. Peter Marino has been influencing interior design industry for decades and has shown the industry that luxury design can also be sustainable. Elsie DeWolf is the reason that the interior design industry is the industry it is today, as she is largely credited with being the first professional interior designer. Finally, Kelly Wearstler is one of the pioneers of technology use and AI within the industry and argues that AI is an ally and a tool to be used, Feel free to pause the podcast for a moment if you would like to read further information about any of these icons. Now let's move on to our rising stars and mover and shaker. Currently on the screen you'll be able to see an infographic based on these designers. Two names that you can see here and that keep popping up within our industry currently are Tess McGeechee and Amy Stoddart, who are both fairly new, up-and-coming interior designers based in London. They show immense potential to both become icons and are working extremely hard to ensure that they get to that level. The other name that you'll be able to see is Kelly Hopton, our mover and shaker. She's an extremely well-respected interior designer with over 40 years experience, who combines elements from Asian countries and Western countries in order to create a unique, modern and minimalistic finished design. Please, once again, feel free to pause the podcast momentarily if you would like to read further information about any of these designers. Next, we're going to talk about career trajectories within the interior design industry. First of all, there are three main pathways you can take into interior design. These are freelance, a portfolio career, and working for a singular employer. Freelance is where you have just the one job and you work for yourself, meaning you are able to decide your own working hours and you are more easily able to negotiate pay with clients. From what you've heard so far, you may be thinking that this is the best option. However, there are also some downsides to this, such as unpredictability of work, meaning a possibility of low income periods, no paid time off, you also have to do your own marketing and promotion or pay someone to do this for you. Next, working for a singular employer. There are benefits to this, such as steady stream of income, possibility of employee benefits, and paid time off. However, once again, there are still downsides to this type as well. These are less flexibility due to set working patterns, potential limited income due to a cap on salary, less say on what projects you take on, and also a potential for burnout due to high workloads and short deadlines. Finally, there is a portfolio career, which in a sense is a mixture of both previously mentioned job types. A portfolio career is where you have what is known as a day job, and then you also do freelance or other things to make income on the side. Most often you see people who do this working part-time as their day job, so they have more availability to do their side gig. The pros of this is that there is multiple sources of income, meaning that even during a low period of work on the side gig, it is likely you will still be able to pay your bills. You will still have regular employment whilst pursuing your interests, and you also have greater autonomy due to only working set days on a few days a week. A few cons for the portfolio career, however, are that you can still have some degree of financial uncertainty. There is less free time to yourself, and you also have to be greatly disciplined and be able to self-manage effectively. As you can see, there is no right or wrong answer when it comes to which path to take, and it is entirely dependent on the person. Now let's discuss what skill sets are important for a new interior designer stepping foot into the job field in 2026. Most importantly, as this is a creative field, you will need to be able to think creatively with major attention to detail. You will also need to be able to communicate your design concepts visually, as well as being able to effectively converse with clients often to ensure they are happy with the progress of the project. Time management is also a major skill that I will admit I myself still struggle with. You need this, however, as you will have to work to tight deadlines, often with other jobs on the go as well. Nowadays, you also need a good knowledge of technical expertise such as computer-aided design, also known as CAD. As a creative, networking is pretty much your best friend, and simply by doing this you can drive your business growth. Not only that, but it is said that 85% of jobs in interior design are filled through networking. It may first be daunting to go to networking events, however there are a few things you can do to make sure that you make a good impression, such as arriving on time, dressing well, informing yourself about the event's agenda, and bringing business cards or even a notepad and pen. Now we have looked at what to do at an event, let's briefly discuss the types of events you may have to attend. In the interior design industry, there are many different event types, but to name a few, there are meetings, exhibitions, international trade shows, and workshops. There are also ways of naturally networking, such as the theory of 6 degrees of separation. This is the idea that all people are 6 or fewer social connections away from each other. As a result, a chain of friend of a friend statements can be made to connect any two people in a maximum of 6 steps. The theory was proposed originally in 1929 by Phrygius Corinthi, where a group of people play a game of trying to connect any person in the world to themselves by a chain of 5 others. Now we've looked at networking, let's look into specific roles in our industry. There are so many job roles within the interior design industry, such as residential designers, commercial designers, sustainable designers, hospitality and wellness designers, and exhibition designers. A few examples of residential interior designers are Kelly Hopton, Kelly Weistler, Nikki Haslam, Ben Pentreath, and Catherine Pooley. Now we have discussed different career trajectories, let's look at how interior design company hierarchy works. First of all, on the bottom of the hierarchy, you will find junior designers or design assistants. As you gain experience, you may be presented with the opportunity to move into a new position, which is often referred to as interior designer or project manager. Finally, you have positions like senior designer or design director, which are at senior level and often specialized positions. This podcast episode has been sponsored by Sable Interiors Limited. Combining creative flair, artistic vision, and innovative enthusiasm together with excellent architectural understanding, Sable Interiors maintain a highly acclaimed and prominent reputation for creating spectacular lifestyle solutions for both private homes and commercial properties, large and small. With 30 years of experience, their multidisciplined design practice comprehensively covers every aspect of design, build, and home enhancement. Currently, Sable Interiors Limited has a job position available for a junior interior designer and are seeking a motivated and detail-oriented designer who will be working with a team of welcoming and engaged experts. Apply today and learn what it's like to work and develop your skills with some of the industry's best. Send your full portfolio and CV to hello@sableinteriors.com. That is hello@sableinteriors.com. That's all we have time for today, folks. Join us next week where we'll be doing a deep dive interview with renowned interior designer Marcel Wanders. I hope you have enjoyed this episode and have learned more about your favourite industry. And as always, thank you very much for listening to today's podcast episode. Don't forget to like, rate and review the podcast wherever you may be listening, and I hope each and every one of you has a lovely rest of your day.